Hello and welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi, Daf 41 Omid A of Bekorot. Okay, so let's dive straight in. It says, with regard to the case in the Mishnah of a tail of a calf that does not reach the leg joint, it is taught by that the leg joint is the upper joint, and there's a picture here on page 271 if you have the Sanshals of a Deuteronomy and pointed to its upper joint between the thigh bone and the tibia, and not the lower joint, between the middle and lower bones. And with regard to this upper joint, the corresponding bone in the leg of a camel is conspicuous. And there's a picture of the camel, Deuteronomy dromedary, corresponding bone in the leg of the camel is conspicuous, but in the calf it's not noticeable from the outside. Mishnah. Al Elu Mumin Shurchatin Abchor Zulei Hamukshin Mugdoshin Niftin Aleihin. For these blemishes enumerated in the previous Mishnah, one slaughters the firstborn outside the temple, and disqualified consecrated animals may be redeemed on their account. And what's wider on this additional statement that for these blemishes one slaughters the firstborn outside the temple. It was already taught in the first clause, at the beginning of the chapter. For these blemishes one may slaughter the firstborn animal outside the temple. The Gemara answers that the latter clause of the Mishnah was necessary. Disqualified consecrated animals may be redeemed due to these blemishes. Well, asked, but this too is obvious. If one may slaughter the firstborn due to these blemishes, it is necessary to state that one may redeem them. Rather than the Mishnah, since the previous Mishnah taught that Elah had 3 additional blemishes, the sages said to him, we did not hear about those. And then the Tana of the Mishnah proceeded to teach halacha in the name of individual opinions. Those Rabbi Hanania ben Gamliel, Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonos. One might have thought that this halacha is not in accordance with their rulings. Therefore, he states an unattributed ruling in this Mishnah with regard to their statements. For all these blemishes enumerated in previous Mishnah, one slaughters the firstborn, disqualified consecrated animals may be redeemed due to them. This indicates that halacha is in accordance with all of these opinions, and these are the blemishes that one does not slaughter the firstborn due to them, neither in the temple nor in the rest of the country. Pale spots on the eye and tears streaming from the eye that are not constant. If an animal has a flow of water from its eye that was not constant, or blindness that was not constant, these are considered temporary blemishes. Therefore, it may not be sacrificed, may not be redeemed either. From Sefer Vod, 267, and the internal gums that were damaged. Chotin hapnimis inifgamu. If the internal gums of an animal were damaged or scratched, it may not be sacrificed. Since bringing this animal is not the optimal manner of performing the mitzvah, as required by the virtual choice vows, Deuteronomy 12:11, rather it must graze until it develops a blemish. If the internal gums were extracted, it is considered blemish, as when the animal opens its mouth and cries out, the absence is visible. 283. When that were not extracted, although this animal may not be redeemed, it is prohibited to sacrifice it if its internal gums are damaged or scratched. Since sacrificing it is not the optimal manner of performing the mitzvah. As the Torah states, Deuteronomy 12:11, your choice vows, the Rambam adds that it appears to him that if such an animal is sacrificed, its owner has fulfilled his obligation after the fact. Some commentators infer from this statement that according to the Rambam, this qualification applied by rabbinic law, not Torah law. Mekevet HaMishnah Chazon Ish, and an animal with boils that are moist inside and out, garav, and an animal with warts. Bar Yebeles, an animal with warts. If an animal has a wart without white in the white of its eye, it may not be sacrificed, as sacrificing it is not the optimal manner of performing the mitzvah. It may not be redeemed, but must be left to grade until the rest of blemish. This ruling, according to the Gemara explanation, 40b of the Mishnah of Sefer Vod, 2:8, and an animal with boils, chazazit, ba'agav va'ar chazazis. If an animal has a garav, a boil is moist inside and out, Mishnah chazazit, apart from an Egyptian chazazit, these are temporary blemishes, and an animal may not be sacrificed, but may be redeemed either. By Sefer Vod, 267, and an old Zakin, an old animal. The Gemara indicates that any animal that appears weak due to its age is classified as old, based on the Gemara in Torah 24b, which discusses blemishes of priests. The Rambam writes that an animal that trembles and shakes when standing is defined as old. The Mishnah in Bekorot 1:2 that records a dispute between the Tanaim with regard to the halach of old animals. According to Rabbi Meir, such animals are actually fit, as doing so would be disrespectful to the temple service. We'll come to the Mishnah there. See, Mishnah Melech, the Rambam says, Mizbeach 2:6, or a sick animal, or one with a foul odor. What does that mean? An old animal, one old enough that it trembles and shakes when standing. A sick animal that trembles due to sickness and weakness. An animal with foul odor, old is qualified from the altar, but they may not be redeemed. Mizbeach 2:6, 7, 12, 13. And one with which a transgression was performed. The Evdabo Avera. If either one witness or the owner of a sacrificial animal testifies that the transgression, i.e. bestiality, was performed with that animal, or that the animal killed a person, it may not be sacrificed upon the altar. It may not be redeemed to the verse opponent. That's what Rambam says for Mizbeach 2:9. E.g. copulated with a person or the object of bestiality, or that it killed a person. In these two latter cases, the act of bestiality or killing became known on the basis of the testimony of one witness, or on the basis of the owner. And one does not slaughter a tumtum. If the firstborn animal is a tumtum, it is uncertain whether it has the firstborn status, and therefore it may be eaten by its owner when it develops a blemish. According to the opinion of Chisda on 41b, in Bekorot 2:5, see Sefer Avodah Hilchot Mizbeach, P.T. Shulchan Aruch Yerodea in 15:2. This word comes from the root tetmem mem, meaning closed, either genitalia or closed and unknown. It refers to a person or animal born in a state where its external genitalia cannot be discerned. It has neither male or female genitalia, but simply a kind of fissure in the skin. Occasionally, it becomes apparent that in life whether this individual is male or female, whose sexual organs are concealed, and an hermaphrodite. What's the word here? And to go the roginos from the Greek androgynos, nose, a composite expression meaning man and woman, whose English translation is the term androgynous. Modern medicine distinguishes between two different kinds of hermaphrodite. The more common pseudo-hermaphrodite, who merely appears to be a hermaphrodite, and a true hermaphrodite. A true hermaphrodite has both male and female sex glands, eye testicles and ovaries. A pseudo-hermaphrodite, by contrast, has sex glands only of a single sex, and has the external sex organs of both genders. Due to this double identity, a hermaphrodite cannot be regarded as either male or female. Unlike a tumtum with sex, due to developmental defect, it simply is not known. Therefore, the stage is referred to hermaphrodite as a third sex. It does not belong to either sex. The Rambam writes, if a firstborn animal is hermaphrodite, it has no sex at all, but is like a female animal in which the priest is not entitled. Therefore, it may be put to work and sheared like any other non-consecrated animal. This halacha is according to the opinion of the rabbis, as explained by the Gemara. The Shulchan Aruch writes, a hermaphrodite status of the firstborn is uncertain, and therefore may be eaten by its owners when it develops a blemish, in according to the opinion of the first Tana Rambam, Sefer Karbonas Hilchot Bekorot 2:5, see Seder Avodah Hilchot Mizbeach 3:3, Shulchan Aruch Yerodea 2-3, which has both male and female sexual organs, neither in the temple nor in the rest of the country. Rabbi Shimon says you have no blemish greater than that, and it may be slaughtered. And the rabbis say the halacha state of a hermaphrodite is not that of a firstborn, rather its halacha state is that of an unsacred animal that may be shorn and utilized for labor. The Gemara. The Mishnah teaches the two types of boils, a garav and a chazazit. Are not considered full-fledged blemishes, for which one may slaughter a firstborn outside the temple. The Gemara asks, and is garav not considered a blemish? Is it written garav in the Torah? In the list of blemishes, see Leviticus 22:22. And furthermore, is chazazit not considered a blemish? But isn't it written yalefet in the Torah? In the same verse, and it's taught in the Bible garav. This is referring to boils that are as hard as earthenware, heres. Yalefet. This is the chazazit that referred to the Egyptians. See Exodus 9:10. Rish Lakish says, why is it called Yalefet? The reason is that it grabs Melapefet continuously onto an invalid until the day of death, i.e. it cannot be healed. Granted, the contradiction between the state of Chazazit mentioned in the Torah and that of Chazazit in the Mishnah is not difficult, as here the Torah is referring to an Egyptian Chazazit, and there the Mishnah is referring to a regular Chazazit. So what does this mean? Kan b'Chazazit hamitris kan Chazazit ha'alma. If one has any form of Egyptian Chazazit, which is a harsh ugly Chazazit, this is a blemish. And this is the yellow pet mentioned in the Torah. A regular non-Egyptian Chazazit is a temporary blemish. That's the Rambam says very Hilchot Beis Hamikdash 7:10 and Hilchot Yishurim Mizbeach 2:7. The contradiction between the state of the Gav listed in the Torah and the Gav of the Mishnah is difficult. The Gemara answers that the contradiction between the Gav in the Torah and the Gav in the Mishnah is also not difficult. This ruling of the Mishnah is referring to moist boils, whereas that Gav in the Torah is referring to dry boils. Moist boils will heal and therefore are considered temporary blemish for which one may not slaughter the firstborn. Dry ones will not heal. The Gemara asks, and does a moist boil heal? But isn't it written, the Lord will smite you with the boil of Egypt, and with the hemorrhoids, and with Garav, and with Haras, from which you cannot be healed, Deuteronomy 28:27. And since it's written with Haras, the Hebrew word here, Chares, which is referring to boils that are as hard as earthenware, Chares, moist Garav is thereby stated, and with regard to both types, that verse states, from which you cannot be healed. Well, there are three types of Garav. Ela talasa havu. If one has Garav that is dry in any form, that is a blemish. And it is the Garav mentioned in the Torah, Garav that is moist, but inside of that, because the Mishnah is a temporary blemish. Rambam says, very Beis Hamikdash 7:10, and Yishurim Mizbeach 2:7. First, the Garav of the verse that deals with blemish, which is dry both on the inside and on the outside, this cannot be healed. And it is called Chavis in Deuteronomy. And the second is the Garav in the Mishnah, which can be healed and is moist on the outside and inside. Third, the Garav of Egypt mentioned in Deuteronomy is one of the types of boils of Egypt. This Garav is dry on the inside and therefore cannot be healed, but it is moist on the outside, as it is written with regard to the plague of boils in Egypt, and it became a boil breaking forth with a buot upon man and upon animal. Exodus 9:10. Avabuot, let me get the word here. Avabuos is referring to a substance that pours out, novia, and is moist. Among the conditions that are not considered full-fledged blemishes, but one may not sacrifice an animal with such a condition as an offering either. The Mishnah lists as an old animal, or a sick animal, or one with a foul odor. The Gemara asks, from where are these matters derived? They are derived from a verse, as the sages taught. The verse states, let it often be from in the flock, whether from the sheep or from the goats, Leviticus 1:10. The three incidents of the word from min serve to exclude the old and the sick, and the animal with a foul odor which may not be sacrificed. The Gemara knows that all three exclusions are necessary. As the merciful one had written the word from once, we might have said that this serves to exclude an old animal, but which will not become healthy again, as it will never get younger. But with regard to a sick animal, which might become healthy again, say it is not disqualified. And alternatively, had the merciful one written only one term of exclusion, or might have said that it serves to exclude a sick animal, as it is not the natural manner of an animal to be sick. With regard to an old animal, as this is the natural manner of all animals to grow old, say that it should not be disqualified from the altar. And had the merciful one written only two terms of exclusion, one might have said that they should exclude these weak animals, the sick and the old, as one should sacrifice only a fat, healthy animal. With regard to an animal with a foul odor, which is not weak, then it should not be disqualified. And alternatively, had there been only one term of exclusion, one might have said that it should exclude an animal with a foul odor, as it is repulsive. With regard to these other two cases of an old and sick animal, which are not repulsive, say that they are not excluded. Therefore, all three exclusions are necessary. The Mishnah teaches that an animal with which a transgression was performed, and one that killed a person, that was known on the basis of the testimony of one witness or the owner, are disqualified from being sacrificed. The Gemara asks, where these matters derived? They are derived from a verse. As the sages taught in a Braita, that when the verse states, "You shall bring your offering from the cattle, even from the herd or from the flock," Leviticus 1:2, each mention of the word "from" is interpreted as a term of exclusion. The expression "from the cattle" serves to exclude an animal that cooperated with the person and an animal that was the object of bestiality. The expression "from the herd" serves to exclude an animal worshipped as a deity, and from the flock it serves to exclude an animal set aside for idol worship. Finally, the word "or" in the expression "or from the flock" serves to exclude an animal that gored and killed a person. The Gemara challenges in these cases of an animal that cooperated with a person, an animal that was subject to bestiality, and an animal that gored and killed a person, they are liable to death by stoning. Why then in the business to exclude them? The Gemara answers that this is referring to a case where an incident was known on the basis of the testimony of one witness or on the basis of the owner. Therefore, the animal is not killed, as there are not two witnesses to the event, but the testimony is sufficient to disqualify the animal as a sacrifice. The Mishnah teaches that one does not slaughter a tumtum and an hermaphrodite neither in the temple nor the rest of the country. The Gemara asks, granted that one does not slaughter a tumtum neither in the temple, as perhaps it is a female and therefore should not have physical state that may not be sacrificed, nor in the rest of the country, as perhaps it is a male and it does not have a blemish, in which case it would be slaughtering a sacrificial animal. But in the case of a hermaphrodite, granted that one does not slaughter it in the temple, perhaps it is a female, but with regard to the rest of the country, even let it be considered a male, nevertheless its female organ should be considered as a crack, a haritz, which is included in the blemish of crack harutz. This is in Torah Leviticus 22, and let one slaughter it due to that blemish. Abai said in response to this stage, or cracked or broken, Leviticus 22, which teaches that the blemish of being cracked similar to that of being broken, just as the blemish of being broken is relevant to the location of a bone, as there is no break where there is only flesh, so too the term cracked is referring to a blemish found in the location of a bone, not in the location of the sexual organs. With regard to any visible bone in which there is a crack, this is a blemish, and it's included in the Chawat state in the Torah the Sefer Avoda of a Beis HaMikdash 7:11. Rava said, even without the comparison to broken, I've lost that point. Rava said, even without the comparison to broken, you cannot say that a crack in the location of flesh where there is no bone is a blemish, as if it would enter your mind that it is a blemish, since the Tana and the Braita cited above said with regard to Garav that this is referring to boils that was hard as earth and where heres. Evidently, this blemish is a crack in the skin, and is with regard to the skin disease of leprosy, and its appearance is deeper than the skin. 13:30, and the sages explained it's similar to the appearance of an area lit up by the sun that seems deeper than the shade which appears to cover it. Ha'amuka min hazail. The statement of Rava is ostensibly difficult, as he is attempting to prove that a crack is not a blemish, and he cites the case of leprosy where, as noted in Torah Kohanim, the mark only appears to be deeper than the skin, but the skin is not in fact cracked. The Griz, citing Rashi on 43a, suggests that the leopard's mark does not actually include cracked skin. The cracked skin is covered by a scab, which itself has the appearance of being deeper than the skin. See Chazon Ish and Chazon Nachum. If so, let the Muslim write crack, and it would not need to state Garav. And I would say, if being cracked, which is not repulsive, which is a blemish, then with regard to Garav, which is repulsive, should it not all the more be considered a blemish? Therefore, the Muslim writes Garav to say that a crack found in the location of flesh is not a blemish. Consequently, one cannot say that a female sex organ of a hermaphrodite should be considered a blemish, which one may slaughter for husband outside the temple. In this connection, the Gemara cites the statement of the Mishnah with regard to hermaphrodite. Rabbi Shmuel says, you have no blemish greater than that. Rabbi Shmuel ein omer ein l'chol mum lo mizeh. This is another instance where, as previously in 40b, the Gemara cites an opinion from the Mishnah in a manner different from the context of the Mishnah itself. In this case, Rabbi Shimon, not Rabbi Yishmael, is cited in the Mishnah as stating this principle. Some suggest that the Mishnah should be amended to read Rabbi Yishmael, Mesoret Hashas, and it may be slaughtered. Evidently, Rabbi Yishmael maintains that the female sex organ of hermaphrodite is considered a blemish. The Gemara explains, Rabbi Yishmael does not state a ruling like that of Abaye, as he maintained that we do not say that the blemish of being cracked is similar to that of being broken. Rather, they are entirely different blemishes, and a crack found on the flesh is considered a blemish. Rabbi Shmuel also does not state a ruling like that of Rava, as perhaps his conclusion that a crack found when there is no bone is not a blemish. But in the case where it is conspicuous, such as a female sex organ, we call it an ill blemish, Deuteronomy 15:21, and this animal is disqualified for use as an offering. Thank you for listening, and wish you all the best. Take care. Bye.